Okay, well then I'm going to start passing the mic, maybe from Sue first, and heading back this way, and then at that point, if there's more questions, we'll take them.
I'll be straight up and say that I'm not entirely feeling terribly qualified to answer this. I think that, I mean, I don't know the numbers. I know it's small. I think that it does bear note, though, that when you're dealing, particularly in this province with the provincial police, there's not a good record of relations. I mean, as you pointed out, and I don't know. There's actually if you go back, and I actually did this, searched through the OPP on different search engines around different instances of racism directed towards First Nations people specifically. And what you get is a very long-standing pattern that emerges and emerges and emerges again and again and again in all different areas in the province and in all different, maybe the circumstances are unique, case by case. So, I mean, that being said, I don't know that people that I know within First Nations communities are necessarily thinking that I don't think it's a given that people believe the answer to this problem is necessarily to join the team. There are very, very far-reaching systemic issues of racism within the organization itself. And I don't know if, kind of being like one cog in the overall machine is always seen as terribly useful. But I mean, again, in a certain sense, you're asking for people's opinions, and that would be mine. Without look at from the top down, that there is very little, there's very little to be accomplished there. And I'll just say, for Commissioner Fantino right now, who's heading up the OPP, it's my understanding that he didn't even think it important enough to attend the release of the findings of the Upper Wash inquiry. I think that's indicative of, how much the OPP wants to learn from what happened that night when Dudley was killed.
Just to try to answer the question, I guess in terms of the police, there are two aspects. One is there are First Nations policing in various parts of the province. They are First Nations police officers operating under the auspices of the OPP generally, and therefore accountable to the Solicitor General of Ontario, who's an elected provincial representative. In fact, on the June 29th,
is it okay for you to speak up just a tiny bit?
I'm sorry. On June 29th, there were several First Nations police officers involved, and our view is they were making real progress in dealing with Shawn, in ensuring that it came to a peaceful resolution. The difficulty with the OPP and other police forces and the legal system in general is that despite all the training that people attend, despite reports such as Zipper Wash, we never seem to get it. We never seem to understand if you want to fill the role as a police officer, which is to ensure peace and harmony in communities, then you've got to understand the community. And for years when I was at SIU, I spent a lot of time in Northern Ontario, for example, where First Nations people predominantly represented the largest part of the population. And there were alcohol problems, there were drug problems. So you would have thought that the OPP would have put the best police officers they could find up in outpost because they're dealing with really tough issues and not just cultural ones. No, what the OPP did, if you came really close to being fired, but you weren't quite there and they couldn't fire you, they transferred you up north. And so at SIU we investigated a number of allegations of police brutality against First Nations people. And I think the real problem is, Ipperwash, as Sue says, will come and go. Mark my words, it got a lot of publicity, the media played it up when it was hot. But it will come and go, and we really will have learned nothing. The Supreme Court of Canada case called Gladu, G-L-A-D-E, which I recommend to everyone here, recognized that with respect to First Nations peoples, the administration of justice is systemically racist. And that's the highest court in this country. It took a lot of courage for that court to say that. But that's 19, I think we'll do is around 95. It's 12 years down the road. We're still in the same spot.
I'm not quite sure how to respond to that. I think I'd like to tell you just a very short story. One day we were driving on the 401 and we got stopped for speeding. I dare not tell you how fast my husband was driving, but he was on what we call the hammer lane, the left lane, and the cop pulled us over there, OPP. And this big white guy, and my husband, I don't know, probably haven't seen him, but he's about 5'8". He would probably say 5'9". And he told him to get out of his car, and he said, "Do you realize how fast you were going?" And of course my husband responded, "Well, no, officer, I was just concentrating on the road, making sure that I was driving properly. I don't know, maybe like 120. And he says, "Oh no, 130. And he says, "Come on over here." And he had one of those laser guns. And he says, "I want you to look through this." And he gave him the gun, and he was showing him how it worked and clocking the cars and how fast they were going. And my husband said, "Oh, and so anyway, this cop wrote out quite a fat ticket, and he says, "Buddy," he says, I want you to slow down. You have a whole family in your car." And off we went. And my husband, I was of course furious because I knew how expensive it was and how it was going to hit our insurance. And my husband had a smile on his face. And I understood immediately what that was about. That police officer showed my husband respect. He treated him like he was a human being, like he was just a regular person. It didn't matter what color he was. And so that day, my husband got more than a ticket. And I'll never forget that. All they have to realize, and there is in fact systemic racism, and it's acknowledged. It's acknowledged in task force reports, but the change has to come from within. And until that change occurs, then the communities will always distrust them. They'll be fearful,